Airbnb bookings are slow right now, especially in some markets like Panama City Beach where we own 40 units. I've talked about it being the slowest slow season I've seen, and that is definitely true. Even still, a couple weeks after recording the video, I talked about the short-term rental market slump. And it's important to recognize that bookings are so slow because listing supply has increased so much. And even though demand for Airbnb bookings has increased, there's a lot more players in the space right now. And I expect that this low season will clear out a lot of people who this is their first go at Airbnb and expected to be swimming in the cash flow only to find their calendars empty. But today I'm going to talk to you about how we as hosts can combat that and how you can get your calendar filled up even when the demand is really low. Like right now in Panama City Beach, there's people who have completely empty calendars, and with our operations and our pricing strategies, we're at 50% occupied, which is low, but that's beating the market occupancy by a pretty wide margin. And for those of you that don't know, I'm Blake Daly, co-owner of Adventure Stays, and my partner Jake and I own 4 boutique hotels together, and I have another boutique hotel and a couple Airbnb houses that I own myself. It's 86 listings altogether, and we've brought in over $2.5 million in booking revenue this year alone. So we live and breathe real estate, and especially short-term rentals. Been doing Airbnb for almost 4 years, and I'm going to share with you some of my low season pricing strategies that I've learned over my time. So getting into this, you first have to determine your base rate, and this is important, your minimum price. You need to have a minimum price that you aren't willing to go below to ward off your nightmare guests. So when you price your place too low, you risk getting the bad guests that the low rates attract. This is when you can get single night bookings for people to throw parties or really low quality guests that tear up your space. If you have a pretty nice place and drop your rates down to the price of a really rough, beat up, or sketchy listing, then the really rough, beat up, sketchy person that would book that place is now can book your place instead. These people are always the most price conscious, so keep your nightly rate above that range so you have the buffer. You don't want to rent your place for more headache than it's worth. I want to introduce you guys to an idea called contribution margin, which basically is your sales revenue minus your variable expenses. Since your fixed expenses have to be paid regardless of whether you rent a room or not, you take those out of the equation in determining your lowest price. It's kind of counterintuitive because you're paying the expense anyway, right? You'd like to make the money to cover all your expenses, but you're talking about nightly rates here, not monthly rates. And this is how the industry works, because in the short-term rental space, once a night goes by, it can't be booked and generate revenue. So you'd rather get it booked at a rate above your contribution margin, which is, your variable expenses. Otherwise, you leave money on the table. So your fixed expenses are things like your mortgage, your insurance, your subscription fees that you're charged every month and pay for whether the place is rented or not. So you look at what the variable expenses are to rent a room to know what you need to charge in order to be above that with your desired range of margin. And your variable expenses are things like your utilities, because the more the unit is occupied, the more guests use the water and the electricity, so those bills will change based on the occupancy. And same with cleaning costs or the labor you pay your cleaners, the supplies, and the maintenance. These are all expenses that fluctuate based on your occupancy. So once you calculate your contribution margin, let's just say for example it's $40. So anything above that would be positive on your revenue, as long as that price is above what your lowest price is, based on what you don't want to rent to get the bad guests. And the only real way to find that out is by trial and error or talking to several hosts in the area, because they'll probably all have different opinions on what that price is. So now getting into the booking psychology and the trends of the low season. With the low demand, there's typically reduced booking lead time. And booking lead time is the time from when someone books to when they check in. So that lead time is how far in advance they're booking. And right now, our annual average booking lead time is around 22 to 23 days, just for reference. In our portfolio over the last 5 weeks, we've gone from 19 to 17 to 12 to 9, and now just over 7 days. So the average people are looking at booking just a week out in advance. So that is going to make your calendar fill up closer to the day, which can feel scary because you're going to look at your calendar and see a lot of empty days. But by knowing your booking lead time, you can make more informed pricing decisions. So things you can do. One option is to hold firmer on your prices and not drop them significantly until you get around that 1 week range if your booking lead time is 1 week like ours. and then start aggressively dropping your prices maybe 5 to 10% a day until you start getting bookings. But that's also risky if your competition is already dropping their prices and then most of the reservations for that period are already filled. So once a person books a place to stay, they're not looking for another, they've already got their reservation locked up. So what you can do instead is drop your prices in advance, maybe the 2-week time frame, to fill up your calendar faster. And it's going to be at a lower rate, but at least you lock in the bookings to avoid getting into the price cutting the competition. And this one is really dependent on your market and how much demand there is. And I'll say in our markets, we typically do the latter and discount a little sooner so we can get reservations locked in and not risk our dates going unfilled. Now, something that's important to understand is that your chance of getting a booking reduces as the date gets near, assuming there's not an event on that date or it's not an otherwise high demand date. Meaning as the day approaches and remains unbooked, potential guests that may have stayed already have made their reservation somewhere else. As you get inside the average of your booking lead time, the chances of you getting a booking go down even more. So think of like a bell curve, right? That with the booking lead time in the middle, the time around when most people book. As you go further away in any direction from the middle, there are less reservations. And what we do to combat this is we reduce our prices proportionally each day inside a certain range. So say booking lead time is 7 days, we start reduction at 8 days and incrementally reduce the price each day that goes by unbooked. We typically have a 20 to 30% range that we go down in total if it goes down to the last day, but we don't price this all at once. Instead, we'll do like a 4% reduction each day that builds up to that 20 to 30%. This is actually setting in price slabs, which is our dynamic pricing tool that goes into effect automatically, but you can manually do it the same. Another thing we do in the low season is incentivize longer reservations to increase our occupancy. So we'll give length of stay discounts for reservations that are over a certain number of days. And one I really like is a 3-day length of stay discount of say 10 to 15%. And I'll apply that from Thursday until Monday to incentivize people staying the extra day throughout the weekend. So instead of just booking a Friday and Saturday like a normal weekend reservation and then checking out on Sunday, if they stay Thursday through Sunday or Friday through Monday, they'll get that discount for staying the extra day. This gets us the extra day booked on a lower demand date that may not otherwise be booked. Or if it was, it might have been a last minute booking that would have reduced the price even more. So that's a way for us to increase our occupancy and maximize our revenue. Looking back at our data in the past 6 weeks or so, our length of stay increased to 3.6 days, and before that it was 2.8 days. So people are staying almost a day longer per reservation on average. And to get the most bookings, you want to show up in the largest amount of search results. I recommend keeping your minimum stay set low, 1 day if you're willing, and increase your maximum length of stay to 90 days plus. So most hosts will limit their stays to 30 to 60 days to get more shorter stays. So this will allow you to set apart. And long-term reservations can be huge savers for you in the low season. I'd much rather have a 30 plus day reservation and give them like 25 to 30% off their reservation than have those same 30 days eaten up by smaller reservations with lower occupancy, even with the higher rates. The operational demands are higher. You might not even make more money if the demand is really low and you don't get enough days booked. Or if they go unbooked and then start getting discounted as the unbooked dates get nearer, like we talked about a minute ago. So you can go into your length of stay settings and you can lower your minimum and you can increase your maximum length of stay so you can show up more search results that your listing will be in. Because if you have a maximum stay set at 29 days, your listing won't show up for any searches that are 30 days plus. And then make sure to apply generous discounts like in that 25 to 30% range for your 30 plus day stays. We have a few of those now and they're becoming more frequent too as we're kind of in the bulk of the low season. That puts money on the books and at least guarantees a minimum amount of revenue that we want for a listing while lowering our operational demands, and we have less guests to deal with, less turns in between bookings. So these are some of my favorite low season pricing strategies to help getting listings filled when demand is really low. If you aren't using them now, try them out and let me know how it works for you. I think you'll be pretty pleased with the results. If you guys liked the video, please smash the like button so this video can reach others who are dealing with the same problems with their Airbnbs. I make these videos and share the lessons I've learned because videos like this and discussions around this stuff have really helped me a lot over the years. And before you go, hit that subscribe button too, and I'll keep bringing you guys the good stuff that has worked well for me and that we use to maximize in our business.